Ladies and gentlemen, it's your friend Mike Brady from Oceanliner Designs, and recently we made the very exciting announcement that we had secretly been working on a video game. We had announced a video game a little while ago called Grand Voyage. Well, we've been working on one that's more of a companion piece to the channel. It's like a interactive, immersive Oceanliner Designs video, and it gives you the option to just kind of like walk around the ships that we talk about in the channel. In the background, you can see the SS United States. Now, we already did a video on the SS United States just recently when we announced that the game was coming out. So today I thought we'd do something a little bit different and look around the Morro Castle. So this is the bridge of the Morro Castle. We're standing in the bridge wing. Now, we'd done a whole video documentary series about the Morro Castle a couple of months ago, where we were talking about the ship and its career and the fire that ultimately destroyed it. It's a really horrendous story. So today we're actually not going to be talking about the fire as much, more so talking about the ship as I take you for a tour around it. Now, there is a level in Ship Explorer where you can see the ship's final moments, you can experience the fire. It's pretty horrifying, so I think today what we'll do is we'll just look around the ship and see it as it was. Very beautiful ship, extremely beautiful, very well balanced. We'll start around here. We'll walk all the way up here. This is like a dream come true for me to be able to want to talk about these ships and get to show you around them instead of having to just show you plans or photographs. This is really cool. So first things first, I feel like we're gonna have to make this a tradition. But if you walk up here and you press the interact button, so this is the roof of the officers' quarters and the bridge. So what's interesting is by this point in ship design and construction, bridges were fully enclosed to protect the crew from the elements. Until then, especially the British were obsessed with having their bridges exposed. I guess it was just tradition. It was like, real sailors, real men of the sea kind of just dealt with being out in the elements and getting rained on. But by the 20s and 30s, I think collectively we'd realized, actually maybe we should put these people in some cover. This is a little compass platform. So up here, this little spot is known as Monkey Island, not just on Morro Castle, but other ships as well. And this is a really important spot because this is where extra compass readings can be taken. So you can see here one of the ship's compass pinnacles. This is essentially a redundancy, so there would have been one down in the bridge below us as well, but being up here, you can see that this actual Monkey Island platform is just like a little timber structure. So if that's about 3 feet tall, you've, positioned this compass pinnacle 3 feet away from the steel in the deck. So there will be absolutely no magnetic interference on the reading. And they also included these big, metal balls either side of the binnacle to offset any magnetic interference as well, painted red for port and green for starboard. So that's, just a little clever way of, positioning your compass binnacle if you needed to take a reading. It's really important because, if the ship, this is all really nice and good, but actually if we use, this is so cool that I get to explain this stuff to you guys and show you in real time. If we change this to nighttime in the middle of a storm, and the ship's going to be being thrown around, it's really hard to see where you're going and what you're doing. And the ship has to stay on course on the, the voyage up from Havana to New York and back. So having this redundancy, having an extra spot to be able to take a compass reading is really important, because if the ship goes just a tiny bit off course, she'll run ashore in New Jersey, and there's a bit of foreshadowing for you. Wow, this is cool. Wait for one lightning strike in the background that lights the whole thing up. Whoa. Awesome. So on that point, yeah, in the middle of a gale, you wouldn't want to be the guy that has to come up and take the additional compass reading, because you'd be battered to pieces. So let's make this a little bit more pleasant for you guys. Let's go with partial cloud. There we go, that's better. The deck's got to stay wet for a little bit until it dries up. You can see up here, the horns do work. So you've got on the left-hand side a steam whistle. That's a big, tall bell-type steam whistle. And on the right-hand side, you've got a a foghorn, basically. It's like a siren. They sound ridiculous. We haven't included that one in the game yet, because I don't know if people would believe it if they heard what these things sound like. I'll see if I can find a sound file and play it now. The other thing that's interesting here is that you see a lot of little weird vent things on the top of the officers' quarters here. You've got these various mushroom-headed vents. So these are all ventilating units, extractor units for the spaces below. There was a lot of like officers' cabins and things like that. This skylight here was the skylight that looked into the officers' heads, the bathroom. This one here look down on the chart room so that if they needed to consult their maps, they would be able to have some nice light directly down onto them. And then the one all the way back here, look down into the wireless room, the Marconi wireless shack. So lots of natural light coming in. It's a very light ship. It's very well balanced. This is a door that actually leads down into the working spaces below, so you wouldn't have to come up this ladder on the outside of the ship. If you're in a gale, you wouldn't have to do that. What's interesting as well is like these staircases have been built and fitted with fans. So they could also essentially, you see over here, there's a ducted unit. So they're also essentially doubling as like ventilation trunks, which is quite clever. So let's head a little bit further back. Let's go back down where we came from. So Morro Castle was built in the late 20s. In the wake of the Great Depression, as part of a huge effort for the US government to support shipbuilding for the country. And it was done at the last minute by the Ward Line. They came in clutch, actually, the government, because the Ward Line would not have been able to afford this ship at the time of the crash. What's interesting is getting up close and personal with these ships, you realize just how big all these things are. We used this model in the video documentary that we did about Morro Castle, but being able to walk around it and stare up at things, like look at the size of that, really gives you a sense of scale. Now, the Morro Castle was one of a pair of sister ships that was built at the time. The other one being the Oriente, named after a province, I think, in Cuba. And they were extremely beautifully appointed and really well regarded and liked on the route that they serviced. They, like I said, came in clutch for the Ward Line because they wouldn't have been able to afford it if not for that government grant. Then the crash happened and that whole thing had bankrupted a lot of businesses, and Ward Line would have been right on the tipping point because their fleet was pretty haggard by the late 20s. What's interesting is that there are a lot of elements to this ship that make it look like an old steamship from the 1910s. But then you come across things like this. She's been fitted with gravity davits and big steel lifeboats. So this is like the most modern life-saving apparatus at the time. These types of davits, I like to say, and I've said before on the channel, these types of davits essentially haven't really changed since they were introduced on ships like the Morro Castle. Cruise ships still use gravity davits. Obviously now they have things like hydraulic motors or electric motors, which are a little easier to work with. I think the Morro Castle still used electric motors for her gravity davits. But they're extremely functional. They're really, really good to use. A lot easier than the old block and tackle. If Morro Castle had been built even 5 years earlier, she would have had Welland davits, or the ones you had to hand crank out and they let down the ropes by hand, like the ones that you see on ships like Titanic. Now this is the boat deck, and the windows in here, curiously, aren't public spaces. This is all the first class suites. So these were some of the finest rooms on the ship. They all had their own private bathrooms. These were really bougie. I mean, you can imagine this view from your cabin. Pretty good for the time, back then people didn't have their own balcony cabins really. So this is very luxurious to have your staterooms in here. Now we haven't included interiors really in Ship Explorer. It's mainly just an exterior thing because we're giving you the opportunity to walk around the models that we put in our videos. And we don't often make interiors for the videos, but the Morro Castle is an unusual one because she does have and interior, or 2 interior spaces. So I'll go and show you those in a minute. Now back here is one of the main staircases for first class. So this is like a main entryway for people to come out and relax. And one of the things you really notice about Morro Castle is there is a lot of open space for just kind of like chilling and relaxing and hanging out. This deck is absolutely covered in these awning structures. So the reason for this is, you know, if we actually simulate a clear middle of the day, middle of summer, this would have been really hot. Sitting out here, you would have been sweltering. So these awnings, as obstructive as they are and ugly as they are when there's nothing up there, enabled the crew to rig canvas on top so that you could be protected from the sun, and it would have been really nice. Sitting out here, you can just imagine, sit on a deck chair, you can just imagine sitting out here, canvas above your head, looking out at the water, sipping on a cocktail, reading a book. Sounds pretty good to me. But speaking of leisure activities, you can actually see back here, ping pong. Table tennis tables were pretty big on ships from this time. People started to really get into ping pong in the late 20s and the early 30s, and it became a really big pastime. There's always footage of people playing the game on ships like Morro Castle. Bob Smith, who was the cruise director on board, was a great guy. He did a lot during the fire to rescue people. He was one of the last off the ship. But his main job was to organise all the fun and the activities on board, and I think he was quite proud of the fact that Morro Castle had little putting greens around for people to practice their putt. In here, I'm pretty sure, is the ship's gymnasium. So you can see, even more so than other ships, there is a real similarity in some ways to like modern cruise ships of today. You know, there's a huge focus on light and sun and leisure. This ship is all about kind of just having fun because it's a short voyage. You know, going from New York to Havana, it was being sold by Wardline really more as like a leisure thing to do, like taking a cruise, really. So it was basically a cruise with Havana, a stay at Havana on the end, and they sold packages like that. And, you know, modern day cruise ships have swimming pools. But the Morro Castle did not. Oriente did, I think, or she got one later on. Morro Castle didn't. So instead, to cool off, what looks like lamp posts, these are actually shower heads. So you could come back here at the stern of the ship and they would spray cold salt water, I assume, all over you to cool you off. There's actually a great photograph of people having a big laugh and doing this at the stern of the ship. And what a great view! Look at that. So that would have been a lot of fun. Oriente had a pretty successful career, but Morro Castle, of course, unfortunately, did not. She did right up until she didn't. The ship, obviously, though, even though it's all these spaces are dedicated to relaxing and enjoying yourself, she still had to back her way out of the Wardline Pier. And so for that, she has the docking bridge here. So this is really just a way to communicate to the ship's engines and get her moving when she's coming out. So she, you know, it's kind of difficult to get out of the pier. The Wardline wasn't in Chelsea, I don't think. They were down further down. I think they were on actually on the lower east side. I'd have to double check, but they still had to do that, you know, awkward maneuver where they have to back out into the river and then go forward. And so having crew positioned here, you've got this great little docking bridge station where you can see all the way down the length of the ship, just about, and communicate with the bridge and get her out and into the river. One of the things about Ship Explorer is we really want to give you guys the opportunity to see ships from unusual angles. So we've included basically, you can climb on everything is essentially what we wanted to go for. So, you know, these are the rat lines that crew would have been able to walk up to, you know, service the lamps and things that are on top of the mast, access, you know, different points in the ship. But you also get this crazy view that, you know, no one has seen this since at least 1934, this view of the ship. And yeah, it's constantly touching to be on these ships that haven't existed for 90, 100 years and see them from angles that the people who worked on them would have seen. And like, this is a great bird's eye view. This is really cool. I'm also terrified of heights though, so I'm getting sweaty palms. So I'm going to come down here and we will duck under this awning and walk into this little space. So this is the covered promenade, and this space was kind of a light veranda. In here was the cafe, which was very airy, very elegant, very light. These are my favorite spaces on ships, covered promenades like this. You know, if you go on a cruise ship nowadays, you kind of dream of a space like this because you want to sit in a deck chair and read a book. But it's, you know, maybe it's too blowy outside, but you don't want to be in your cabin, you want to be in a public space. This is what this is all about. So that end of it is covered. This end of it is semi-enclosed. And really, really cozy. You can just imagine sitting here for the day, reading a book, getting that view. Fantastic. But if we go in here, we do have a little interior space for you. So when we did our Morro Castle video, Phil made the lounge of the ship because it was very integral to the story. This is where basically the fire began to spread. It had originated in this room over here. But again, I'm not going to go too much into the fire because you guys probably have seen the video, you probably know all about it. But I did want to show you how beautiful these ships were. Now, there's even some details missing from this room. This is you know, it's for the video. It was like a little more demonstrative than literal, but it's a pretty decent representation of what the room would have looked like. Towering with this, you know, 2-deck high ceiling, capped with this magnificent glass dome, which is very, very pretty. And then if we, well, glass skylight, I suppose. It's not really a dome. Skylight. But if we walk, I just got stuck on a chair. But if we walk this way, past the piano, excuse me, go through the maze, we come to one of the, there was a library and a reading and writing room on either side of the ship. So this is a little reading and writing space. And you can see that there are some books in here, which is cool. But there was also these little areas where you could sit down and just like pen a letter to your friends and family. So you had these, which would have been full with ship stationery, pens, that kind of thing. So you could just sit down and write a note, write a letter. You know, there are some traditions that people used to do at sea that we don't do so much anymore, and writing postcards and writing letters was a big one. People used to love doing that. So yeah, having a dedicated space, even though it's only small, it is very, very pretty. Some of the nicest first class staterooms on the ship were actually just up here on the deck above. You can see that there are some corridors leading in. Some of these would have led to passenger staterooms, and they were, you know, first class, really nice, and you would have walked out and had this awesome view, you know, down into the lounge. But it also meant on the night of the fire, when some people were leaving a party, they came out, stood up there and looked down and saw the commotion as the fire was spreading through the lounge. So it's a, you know, bittersweet space to include, but looking at it from the perspective of how beautiful this ship was for the age, it's really nice to see her brought back to life in living color. So I'm going to end my tour of the Morro Castle. There's still things that are, you know, we want you guys to find for yourselves walking around the ship. But I did want to end with this view. We're up on the forecastle deck of the ship. This is the very, very forward end. And Liam, who made this 3D model, did such a great job on all this machinery and equipment. Because even though the machinery and the equipment on each ship is very similar, they're all unique and different in their own special ways. So you can see the windlass here is quite a unit of a thing. This would have been used to drop the ship's very large anchors. I think they're about 5 tons each. So they're pretty decent size. And then you've got further back here, there are all these staircases leading down. So those are all crew spaces. One of the issues with the ship is that the crew spaces weren't very well thought out. They were very cramped. Crew morale wasn't very high. And it just basically led to a sense of discontent among the crew on board. So even though the passengers were having the best time, and it was extremely luxurious and nice for them, the crew were having a very different experience. And a lot of them, it is said, resorted to running contraband, whiskey, you know, even people smuggling and drug running when the ship was stopping in Havana. So it's a really interesting time in history, you know, because the country it was going to, Cuba, was in the middle of a, you know, pretty turbulent political situation. You had this beautiful, luxurious pair of sister ships running holidaymakers into the middle of it. And it got so bad that the shore excursion people who were taking people to Havana had to very heavily curate the experience so they didn't end up running into angry mobs, getting mugged, that kind of thing. But I thought we'd end with this just magnificent view, just fantastic. Never get tired of this, even though I literally do have sweaty palms from being this high up. So yeah, there's lots to experience with Ship Explorer. You can find it on Steam. I'll include a link in the page below. The game's $20, and the future DLC ships that we've got coming out, Bismarck is coming out in the next couple of weeks. She is a free DLC to anyone who buys the game. We also have the Lusitania coming in September. We're very excited for that one. So hope you've enjoyed this very short, very concise tour of the SS Morro Castle. There's plenty to see, plenty to do. Go ahead, check out Steam Explorer or visit the website shipexplorergame.com. Thank you so much for joining me on this little guided tour. As always, stay safe, stay happy, and I'll see you again next time. Ladies and gentlemen, it's your friend Mike Brady from Oceanliner Designs. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a comment below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel because we get new videos out weekly. If you want to support my work and get really cool perks like behind the scenes and early access, please visit my Patreon in the link in the description below, or sign up as a YouTube member. Come and join the crew. As always, stay safe, stay happy, and I'll see you again next time.